So you took a career break, spent time with family, traveled a lot, caught up on reading, or just caught up on sleep. You're really rejuvenated. The energy is through the roof, but you decide to come back to the corporate world. You apply for an exciting role. You get a rejection mail. Should have never taken that career break, obviously.
My name is Shubham Khurana and I'm the creator of Copper Rat Comics, which is a page on Instagram with over 210k followers. I've taken a career break twice. This is the second time I'm on a career break, and I was able to get into my dream job after my first career break. I had a list of 3 companies which I was really keen to get into, and I ended up getting selected for one of those after my previous career break. So if there's one thing I want to start this with, is that not only can you get a great job after your career break, not only could you really have prospects of finding a job, because quite often we think that we'll not even find anything. You can even leap to your dream job. While it had a lot to do with my past experience, I also do think it had a lot to do with the clarity of what I wanted to do, which I got specifically thanks to my career break. So I'm going to address how easy or hard is it to join work after a career break in 5 steps. Now, these 5 steps are the typical 5 steps of finding a job, but I think the way we look at it after a career break might be somewhat different compared to how we look at them when you're looking for a job while working somewhere. And hence, it's important to address all those 5 and what your mindset should be and what some of my pro tips are. Now, the first phase is the preparation phase. This is the phase before even you working on your CV, where you're getting into the mindset of looking for a job, or where you decided that you want to join back the corporate world. Is it easy or hard at this stage compared to when you're working and you've decided to look for a job? I would say it's actually slightly harder. Why it's hard is not because you've taken a career break and therefore people value you or look at you or look at your CV any differently versus when you had not taken a career break. It's hard mostly because of self-flagellation. The process of getting a job is the same. The factors which govern you looking for a job are also the same. It's your experience which hasn't changed. Your experience is either as good or maybe better than what it was before you took the career break, right? The other factors which determine you getting a job, which is the macroeconomic ones, such as how the job market is, therefore what the supply of the jobs are, the level at which you're at, because the higher you go in a level, the more difficult it potentially may get to get a job, even when you're working, because obviously the number of jobs are that much lesser and the funnel keeps sort of tightening as you go up. Or the field you're at, maybe if you're in, let's say, a tech field, let's say AI, and there's an AI boom, then there may be a lot of jobs available for you versus, let's say, marketing role, when a lot of organizations may be looking at very strong profitability metrics. And therefore, the field you're at, I think those factors play a far bigger role, or in fact the only role, when you're looking for a job after a career break, obviously topped with your CV and your experience, compared to the whole idea that you'd even taken a break. However, quite often when you send a CV out and therefore it doesn't get selected, it's very easy for you to blame and scapegoat you having taken a break. So I would say the preparation phase tends to be a tad bit harder, just because you have it at the back of your mind that you had taken a break. The only advice I would have is stop self-flagellating, stop scapegoating your career break. Look at what you've done, look at what your experience is, and look at what you can do to make your CV stand out versus, let's say, blaming the career break, which is the easier thing to do. You've not lost those 5 years or 7 years or 3 years or whatever experience you have. Career break's just been like a pause. If your experience was valuable then, that will continue to be valuable. The second phase is making your CV. I was looking at one video on YouTube, and an Indian YouTuber actually said that you should not show it in your CV. As she said it, whatever you do, don't put your career break or don't even mention it in your CV. I think that is ridiculous advice. I think that the moment you think of career break as something you can't show in your CV, you're already playing on the back foot. You're starting to sort of feel guilty about taking a break, which is the absolute worst way to approach a job hunt, you do not necessarily have to call out your career break almost like a badge of honor just to say, hey, look, I'm so cool, I took a career break. Taking a break is not an achievement in itself, but what you did in that break, what that amounted to, can be an achievement. What are these things? Do they necessarily have to be only professional achievements? If they are, then wonderful. You can call out any certification you did, a startup which you fiddled with but ended up failing at it, or you can even call out what you did which was a passion. So if you maybe ended up reading more, if you ended up traveling to 10 countries, I would still make it a point to call that out, even if it may not be under the professional section, but hobbies and interests section, because I do think that adds a certain value to your CV. And I do also think it helps make it easy to talk about and justify if at all you're asked about a gap on your CV, because then you can use that as an advantage to talk about how that added to you as an individual, rather than suddenly be caught at a back foot when you're in an interview. In fact, if anything, it shows as you being confident and proud about it and shows you as an authentic individual rather than somebody who's trying to hide something. Third phase I'm going to talk about is the application phase. I've seen that applying for a job, thanks to LinkedIn Jobs, has become extremely democratized. There are lots of platforms. It's very easy for you to just go put your CV there. And quite often for the recruiters, it's free. So this is not any different as it is after a career break, but the advice stays the same, which is relying on the power of referrals. I've seen that now, thanks to so many CVs available, it's quite often, unless you have something remarkable in your CV, a draw of lots. It's possibly going to be the same if you would have applied while you're still working or if you had not taken your career break. So I would say all the more so, look for the power of referrals. Reach out to people who work in those organizations, who can vouch for you, who can refer you. And of course, the referred CVs make the job easier for not just you, but for the recruiter as well, because they don't have to rely on a single document. If somebody is vouching for you who's already a part of that organization, that gives that additional badge of certainty that you're going to be at least a candidate worth speaking to or interviewing, right? And hence, referrals is your biggest bet, especially after a career break. The other important thing which I want to mention here when it comes to referrals is quite often we feel guilty about reaching out to people because we've not stayed in touch. It may be a batchmate from your college who you've not spoken to in the last 10 years. It may be an ex-senior or a mentor who you've not stayed in touch with. It's absolutely fine. If they liked you then, if they valued you as an individual then, they would value you as an individual today as well. The fourth phase, which I'm going to talk about, which possibly is one of the most important phases, is the actual interview itself. A lot of people think that there is a need to justify taking a career break in an interview. I don't think you should get into an interview with that mindset at all. There is nothing you need to justify. In fact, let me flip that around and say, what you did in that career break, can that be something which can be a conversation driver in that interview? And the moment you start thinking about it like that, the whole story also flips in your mind. If there are two tips I can give you for the interviews, one, honesty, and number two, confidence. What does honesty mean? A lot of people think that there's a need to mask why they took a career break, and there are some valid reasons, and then there are some reasons which are possibly not as justifiable. I think that if you're looking for a reason which is justifiable and then you're not being true to yourself in an interview, that has a far higher chance of you not really coming across as somebody who's authentic and might actually spoil the rest of your interview versus just actually telling them your story as it is. Even if it is a break you took because you were really frustrated with your previous job, even if it's a break you took because you were extremely tired and exhausted after working for so long, if it is a break you took where you started something but that did not work out, if anything, that honesty not just brings authenticity to the rest of the interview as well, but also makes the person want to know more about you. I do think it also bridges that gap between you and that interviewer, because at the end of the day, that's a person who's also been working in corporate for longer than you have, and they might or might not have taken a career break in the past, but the reason why you did might still sort of help you strike a chord. The second is confidence. As I said, if you flip that around to see what you did in that career break and use that as a dimension, and also in a way use that to talk about how that added to you as an individual, makes you really stand out in an interview as well. Even if you're taking a break just to pursue a passion, to travel, to pursue art, to pursue music, to maybe read more, what you learned and how that added to you in terms of even soft skills, and talking about that with extreme confidence in an interview, again, without being inauthentic, not necessarily forcing it, is what separates you from a lot of other individuals. Do not also overweigh what you've done in your break just to sort of use that as a leverage in your interview as well. If you worked for say 5 years or 10 years and then you've taken a break for 6 months, technically you've only spent 1/10 or 1/20th of your working life in that break. Now ideally, unless you've done something really remarkable in that break, which you think can help drive conversation in that interview and really help you stand out, don't force fit your break to also give it more importance than what it deserves. It works both ways. Also, do not let that 6 months out of 10 years, which is less than 5% of the overall working life you have, dominate the interview and let them bully you. Do not let them use that as a leverage on you. The last stage, and this again is something which ends up being an Achilles heel in the process for a lot of people, is the salary negotiation. Now, somewhere I've seen that when you walk into a salary negotiation after a career break, and since you're already carrying that guilt or the burden of having taken that career break and you have that at the back of your mind whether you would get the job or not, you end up getting shortchanged. What you need to know is salary negotiation is a step which happens after they have selected you. They've liked you, there's something about you which stood out for them, and therefore they think that you're a good fit for the role. Salary negotiation is just the last step, and quite often in salary negotiations, the manager or the person who's hiring is not really even directly involved. Quite often it's just the recruiter who's a part of a separate organization. And they have a separate KRA. Their KRA is to get you for as little a salary as possible, because at the end of the day, they have savings which they have to show as a part of their annual goals. And hence, you think that if, let's say, you ask for too much or if you negotiate too hard, you might have the risk of losing the job. Trust me, there's nothing like that. It's actually just one person who is trying to fight hard for a KPI which they are responsible for, versus your guilt, which is maybe helping you give in too easy. The short answer here is don't play on the back foot. Don't have one person's KRAs and your guilt determine what you could potentially get. Fight as hard as you would if you were working in the previous organization and they were looking to hire you from there. Another thing which you possibly might want to keep in mind is quite often when you've taken a break because of, let's say, changing your field, you're doing a certain line of work and then you decided to change into another line of work, you maybe then could consider taking a salary cut because there isn't that significant experience you have in that field and maybe they are taking a bet on you. If that is the case, then it is somewhat justifiable to take that cut.
I hope you found that video useful. If you're somebody who's on a career break and is just beginning to look for a job, I hope that in its own little way, this helps you prepare or at least get into the right mindset and find the role of your dreams. And if you're somebody who's still on the fence about career breaks, I highly recommend watching this other video, which I'd made about 5 reasons why you should consider taking one. Maybe that'll help clear up some of those thoughts in your mind and help you determine for yourself whether you're ready for one or not. If you liked this and if you liked all the content, I would love for you to like, share and subscribe. Again, I would also love to hear from you in the comments down here about the various topics or specific questions you have about career breaks.